Door canions. Thank you, officer. I'll review these immediately.
A 62-year-old widow walks into my courtroom. People, and let me tell you something, I notice everything. She's wearing a faded floral dress from a thrift store, clutching a worn leather Bible that belonged to her late husband and a manila folder filled with handwritten medical records. Her hands are trembling. Dark circles shadow her eyes from months of grief and sleepless nights. She takes her seat at the plaintiff's table alone, her arthritic fingers gripping that Bible like it's the only thing keeping her anchored to this world. And then, the courtroom doors open again. 3 people enter wearing designer clothes that cost more than most families spend on groceries in 6 months. These aren't strangers. These aren't business rivals or angry neighbors. These are her children, her own son and 2 daughters, walking in like they own the place, like this is just another inconvenient appointment interrupting their busy, successful lives. And I know that within the next 12 minutes, the oldest son will say something so unforgivable, so breathtakingly cruel about their dying father that even my bailiff will struggle to maintain his composure. But here's what makes this story absolutely devastating. What the children don't know, what they couldn't possibly imagine, is that 3 days before their father died, while his body was failing and his voice was reduced to barely a whisper, he used the last of his strength to record a video on his phone, a final message, a warning, a protection for the woman who sacrificed everything to keep him alive and dignified. Through 5 years of living hell, and I have that video. I've watched it, and I've been waiting for the perfect moment to play it in this courtroom. Before I reveal how this became the most emotionally devastating Judge Judy case ever broadcast, the moment that brought 80 million viewers to tears and made 3 wealthy adult children lose absolutely everything they valued in a single afternoon, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that subscribe button. Seriously. Click it right now because we are racing toward our next subscriber milestone. And this story about a mother's heartbreak, a father's final act of love, and children whose greed destroyed their own family will remind you why Judge Judy remained the most powerful voice for justice on television. And listen, if you believe that children have a sacred obligation to honor the parents who sacrificed everything for them, if you think that some line should never be crossed, no matter how much money is involved, leave a comment telling me where you're watching from, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case sparked a national conversation about elder abuse, why the phrase that came out of that son's mouth became the most shared quote of the entire year, and why these 3 adult children will spend the rest of their lives being recognized as the people who betrayed their dying father for money. The case file in front of me reads, Margaret Sullivan versus Robert Sullivan, Jennifer Martinez, and David Sullivan. The claim is $47,000 for theft of inheritance funds, but those dry, legal words don't capture what this is really about. This is about a woman who quit her job as an elementary school teacher to become a full-time caregiver for her husband when he was diagnosed with ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease, a nightmare illness that slowly paralyzes every muscle in your body while your mind stays perfectly sharp, trapped inside a body that's betraying you. I would later learn that for 5 years, Margaret Sullivan bathed her husband when he couldn't move his arms. She fed him through a tube when he couldn't swallow. She turned his body every 2 hours, day and night, to prevent bed sores from forming. She slept on the floor next to his hospital bed for 3 years because she needed to hear if his breathing changed, if he needed her in the dark hours between midnight and dawn. She sold their vacation home to pay for experimental treatments. She cashed out her retirement accounts and took devastating financial penalties to afford the medical equipment that kept him comfortable. She documented every single day in handwritten care logs, every medication, every meal, every bath, every moment of those 1,825 days of round-the-clock caregiving, and across from her, at the defendant's table, sit her 3 children. I see Robert Sullivan, 36 years old, a corporate attorney at a prestigious Manhattan law firm, wearing a $3,500 Hugo Boss suit and an $8,000 Tag Heuer watch on his wrist. His hair is slicked back perfectly. His expression carries that cold calculation that comes from spending your career finding loopholes and exploiting weaknesses. He hasn't visited his mother since his father's funeral 8 months ago. Next to him sits Jennifer Martinez, 33, A successful real estate agent married to a wealthy plastic surgeon. She's wearing a Gucci dress and a Cartier bracelet that catches the courtroom lights every time she checks her phone, which is constantly sighing with theatrical impatience, like being here is the greatest inconvenience of her week. She lives 20 minutes from her mother's house and hasn't called her in 4 months. And then there's David Sullivan, the youngest at 29. The one who still calls himself an entrepreneur, even though every business venture he's ever started has failed, funded by money his parents couldn't afford to lose. He's wearing expensive sneakers and a designer hoodie, avoiding eye contact with his mother. Guilt visible in the way he shifts in his seat and stares at the table. The visual contrast hits me like a brick. It is staggering. Margaret, alone at her table with her worn folder and her dead husband's Bible, her 3 children together, united, dressed in clothes that cost more than she spends on food in half a year, preparing to defend themselves against the woman who gave them life. I, Judge Judy Shin, look up from the case file with that characteristic expression that has made me a cultural icon for decades, a combination of no-nonsense authority and genuine interest in hearing the truth beneath the legal paperwork. My voice cuts through the courtroom tension like a scalpel. Mrs. Sullivan, you're suing your own children for $47,000. That must be incredibly painful for you. Please tell the court exactly what happened. Margaret's voice shakes as she begins. I listen as her words, careful and respectful despite the trembling, fill the room. Yes, Your Honor, my husband Thomas died 8 months ago from ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. She pauses, swallowing hard against the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. He went from being a man who ran marathons, who could lift our grandchildren over his head and make them laugh, to someone who couldn't lift a fork to his own mouth. I watched the strongest man I ever knew lose everything except his mind and his dignity. For 5 years, I took care of him. I quit my teaching job because we couldn't afford full-time nursing care at $8,000 a month. I did everything myself, the feeding tube, the bathing, turning him every 2 hours, even through the night, so his skin wouldn't break down. I slept on the floor next to his hospital bed for 3 years because I needed to hear if something went wrong, if he needed me. I examined the handwritten care logs that Margaret has pulled from her folder, page after page of meticulous entries showing dates, times, medications, services performed in each room. These are very detailed records. Mrs. Sullivan, you clearly took your work seriously. Margaret allows herself the smallest grateful smile. Yes, Your Honor. I learned a long time ago that in my position, you have to keep perfect records because people will always question your work, especially when money is involved. My husband had a life insurance policy for $150,000. He named me as the sole beneficiary. That money was supposed to pay off the medical debts we accumulated, cover his funeral costs, and let me retire with some dignity like he wanted. He made me promise I would use it to finally rest, to not have to work until I died. But 2 weeks after we buried him, my son Robert came to visit with urgent legal documents. He said that Thomas had verbally promised to split the insurance money with the children, that I was only the named beneficiary for tax purposes. My daughters backed him up. They said their father always wanted them to have something, that it would honor his memory. I was in such a fog of grief, Your Honor. I wasn't thinking clearly. I wrote them each a check for $15,000. $45,000 total. And 2 months later, I realized I couldn't pay my mortgage. I couldn't afford groceries. Everything Thomas wanted to protect me from was happening because I trusted my own children. From across the aisle, I see Victoria Brown roll her eyes so dramatically that several gallery members notice. Robert Sullivan leans forward with the practiced confidence of someone who has never truly been challenged in his privileged life. Your Honor, this is a complete misunderstanding blown out of proportion by grief-induced confusion. My father explicitly told all 3 of us that he wanted his life insurance divided equally among the family. Our mother was named beneficiary for tax purposes only, but Dad's verbal intentions were crystal clear to everyone. She gave us that money willingly, and now, months later, she's experiencing seller's remorse and trying to blame us for her own financial decisions. My eyebrow raises slightly, a small movement that regular viewers know means someone is about to be destroyed. Mr. Sullivan, you're an attorney. Did your father leave a will? Robert shifts slightly. No, Your Honor, but verbal intentions in family matters are commonly understood to be binding. My voice becomes dangerously quiet. Did he leave any written documentation of this alleged promise? Robert's jaw tightens. Not formally, but the understanding was clear. So, 2 weeks after your father's funeral, a licensed attorney who understands contract law and undue influence convinced your grieving mother to write you a check for $15,000 based solely on your word. Robert's face flushes. I resent the implication, Your Honor. I don't blink. I haven't made an implication yet. Mr. Sullivan, when I do, you'll know it. I turn my attention to Jennifer Martinez, and my tone sharpens with each word. Mrs. Martinez, when was the last time you visited your mother before your father died? Jennifer shifts uncomfortably in her seat, her manicured fingers gripping her designer handbag. I was very busy with work and my own family, Your Honor. I have a demanding career and children of my own to think about. My expression hardens. I didn't ask about your schedule. I asked how many times you visited your dying father in his final year. The courtroom goes silent. Jennifer's face reddens as she realizes she's trapped. Maybe 4 or 5 times. She whispers. I lean forward. Your father was dying for 365 days and you visited 5 times. That's once every 73 days. But you had time to show up 2 weeks after his funeral to collect $15,000, didn't you? Jennifer's voice becomes defensive. Your Honor, I sent money to help with his care. How much? Jennifer goes silent. You sent money to help cover $8,000 in monthly nursing costs that your mother couldn't afford. Jennifer looks down. Well, no, but I had my own expenses. My voice cuts like ice. But you had no problem taking $15,000 from your widowed mother who was living on Social Security, the youngest son. David squirms in his seat as my gaze lands on him. Mr. Sullivan, I see in the records that your parents lent you $30,000 for a business venture 3 years ago. Did you pay them back? David's voice is barely audible. Not yet, Your Honor. The business didn't work out the way I planned. So, your parents gave you $30,000 they couldn't afford to lose. Your father got sick and died, and you never repaid them. But you had no problem taking another $15,000 from your mother after his death. David can't meet my eyes. I was planning to pay them back once I got on my feet. I can hear audience members shaking their heads in disgust. My bailiff's expression hardens with contempt. I open a folder and pull out several printed pages. Double quotes, Mrs. Sullivan. You brought some additional evidence with you today. Please explain what this is. Margaret's hands tremble as she unfolds a piece of paper covered in shaky handwriting. 3 weeks before my husband died, when he could barely hold a pen anymore, he wrote me a letter. His hands were so weak from the disease that it took him almost 2 hours to write 1 page. I take the letter and begin reading aloud, my voice steady but carrying an edge of emotion that silences the entire courtroom. My dearest Margaret, you gave up everything for me. You slept on floors. You lifted my body when I couldn't move. You never complained once, even though I know how hard this has been. This insurance money is for you. You earned every penny through love I could never repay. Please don't let anyone take this from you. You deserve to rest. You deserve to be happy. I love you forever, Thomas. The date shows it was written just weeks before his death. The courtroom is absolutely silent, but I'm not finished. I pull out another set of documents. Mrs. Sullivan also subpoenaed text messages between the 3 defendants. Let me read these for the record. 1 week after the funeral, Robert texts Jennifer and David, Mom's vulnerable right now. She'll give us the money if we present a united front. Dad would want us to have financial security. Jennifer responds, how much should we ask for? And Robert replies, $15,000 each, 45 total. She won't question it if we all stick together. David's response reads, guys, I don't know about this, feels wrong. And Robert's final message, don't be weak. This is our inheritance. 2. The evidence of premeditation hangs in the air like a guillotine blade. Before I tell you what happens next, before I reveal the moment that made this the most viral Judge Judy case in history, I need you to smash that like button right now. Seriously, if this story is making you angry, if you can't believe what these children did to their own mother, hit that like button so hard your screen cracks. And make sure you're subscribed, because what I, Judge Judy, am about to do to these 3 entitled adults will restore your faith that justice still exists. Comment the word justice if you think Margaret deserves every penny she's asking for. Now, let me tell you what happened next. My eyes lock onto Robert Sullivan, with an intensity that makes him shift in his expensive suit. Mr. Sullivan, you texted your siblings about manipulating your grieving mother for money 1 week after burying your father. You're an attorney. You understand undue influence. You understand exploitation of vulnerable individuals. What exactly were you thinking? Robert's mask of professional composure begins to crack. Your Honor, with all due respect, those texts are being taken out of context. We were simply discussing our father's wishes and how to honor his memory through appropriate distribution of assets. My mother is 62 years old. She doesn't need $150,000. She has Social Security and a pension. We have families of our own to support, children to put through college, futures to plan for. My voice becomes dangerously quiet. Your mother doesn't need the money her husband left specifically for her. Robert leans back with growing arrogance. Honestly, Your Honor, she's going to die in the next 20 years anyway. What's she going to do with all that money? She should be thinking about her legacy, about helping her grandchildren, about what really matters. Jennifer jumps in, apparently unable to read the room. Exactly, Your Honor. Mom got to play the hero nurse for 5 years. Everyone praised her. She got all the attention and sympathy. The least she can do is share the financial reward. We're the ones who have to live with the trauma of watching our father deteriorate month after month. We're the ones paying therapy bills to deal with what we witnessed. She got closure. We got nightmares. I hear the gallery erupt in angry murmurs. Margaret's face crumbles as tears stream down her cheeks. But Robert isn't finished. He's about to say the words that will define him for the rest of his life, the phrase that will be shared 80 million times across every social media platform, the moment that will destroy everything he's built. He stands slightly, his voice rising with indignation. Your Honor, let's be honest about what happened here. My father spent the last 5 years of his life as a vegetable. He couldn't talk, couldn't move, couldn't do anything. My mother got to play hero caregiver, and everyone treated her like a saint. But we're the ones who had to watch our father become nothing, become less than human. We deserve compensation for that trauma. The courtroom explodes. Gasps echo off the walls. My bailiff's mouth falls open in shock. David puts his head in his hands, realizing his brother has just crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Margaret lets out a broken sob that sounds like something inside her just shattered. I go completely still. Not a muscle moves. My face transforms from stern authority to something beyond anger, something that looks like moral revulsion at witnessing genuine evil. The silence that follows is suffocating. 5 full seconds pass. You can hear the hum of the fluorescent lights. The courtroom camera captures my expression, and millions of future viewers will pause the video at this exact moment to study the cold fury written across my face. When I finally speak, my voice is barely above a whisper, which somehow makes it more terrifying than if I had shouted, "What did you just call your father?" Robert realizes his mistake, but his arrogance won't let him back down. I meant, medically speaking, Your Honor. He was in a vegetative state. It's a clinical term. My voice drops even lower. Your father, the man who raised you, who paid for your fancy law degree, who worked 2 jobs to give you every opportunity, the man whose body your mother bathed and turned and fed for 1,825 days, while you visited 5 times in his final year. You just called him a vegetable. Robert's face pales, but he doubles down. Your Honor, I'm simply being realistic about the situation. My father's quality of life was non-existent. Anyone looking at it objectively would agree. Slowly, I reach for a folder that's been sitting on my bench since the beginning of the trial. My movements are deliberate, controlled. Before I respond to what you just said, Mr. Sullivan, there's something I need to show this courtroom, something your mother brought to my attention before this hearing began. 3 days before your father died, while his body was shutting down and he could barely whisper, he asked your mother to bring him his phone. He wanted to record something, a message for you, for all 3 of you, and more importantly, for her to protect her from exactly what you're doing right now. I look at my bailiff. Play the video. The courtroom screen flickers to life, and Thomas Sullivan's face appears gaunt and weak, lying in a hospital bed, oxygen tubes in his nose, but his eyes sharp and aware, and filled with a devastating mixture of love and sorrow. I glance at Margaret in the present moment. Her hand is pressed to her mouth, fresh tears streaming as she hears her husband's voice again for the first time since he died. And what Thomas says in the next 90 seconds will destroy his children completely. Thomas Sullivan's voice comes through the courtroom speakers, weak and raspy, but unmistakably clear in its intention. Double quotes, Margaret, my love, if you're watching this, It means I'm gone, and something has happened that I prayed wouldn't. Our children have asked you for the insurance money. His breathing is labored between sentences. I need you to know something. 3 months ago, Robert came to visit me. Only time he came without you there. He asked me to change the beneficiary, to split it 4 ways. When I refused, he suggested I might not be mentally competent to make financial decisions anymore. Your own son, Margaret. He threatened to have me declared incompetent because I wouldn't give him money. Thomas's eyes well with tears on the screen. I didn't tell you because you had enough pain, but I'm telling you now that insurance is yours. You earned it through 5 years of love that never wavered. You bathed me when I soiled myself. You held my hand through every nightmare. You never once made me feel like a burden. Even though I knew I was destroying your life, Jennifer and David haven't called in months. Robert only comes when he wants something. But you, my beautiful wife, you stayed every single day, every single night. The courtroom is dead silent except for the sound of Margaret sobbing and Jennifer beginning to cry as she realizes the depth of their betrayal being exposed. Thomas continues, his voice growing weaker. If they come asking for this money, if they try to guilt you or manipulate you, I want you to remember what I'm saying right now. You owe them nothing. They made their choices. They chose their careers and their comfort over their dying father. You chose love. That money is not their inheritance. It's your earned compensation for sacrifice beyond measure. Don't let them take it. Don't let them make you feel guilty. You protect yourself, Margaret. You rest. You be happy. You find joy again. Promise me. The video ends with Thomas lifting one trembling hand toward the camera in a final gesture of love before the screen goes black. I let the silence sit for 10 full seconds. When I speak, my voice carries the weight of absolute moral authority. Mr. Sullivan, your father just told this courtroom, told the world, that you tried to have him declared mentally incompetent so you could control his money while he was dying. Robert's face has gone completely white. Your Honor, that's not, I never. He was confused. My hand slams down on the bench. Your father was not confused. He was dying, and he used his last reserves of strength to protect his wife from you, from all 3 of you. I turned to Jennifer and David, and you, too. Did you know your brother tried to have your father declared incompetent? Jennifer is crying openly now. We didn't know. I swear we didn't know. David's voice breaks. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. My eyes blaze. Sorry doesn't pay her mortgage. Sorry doesn't give her back the security your father died trying to guarantee her. Here's my judgment, Mrs. Sullivan. I'm awarding you the full $47,000 you're requesting. That's the $45,000 your children manipulated from you, plus court costs. But I'm not stopping there. I'm adding $50,000 in punitive damages for elder financial abuse and emotional distress. Your total judgment is $97,000 to be paid within 30 days. Furthermore, I am referring this case to the District Attorney's Office for criminal investigation of elder abuse and attempted financial exploitation of an incapacitated person. Robert, as a licensed attorney, I'm also reporting you to the California State Bar for ethical violations. Using your legal knowledge to defraud your dying father and vulnerable mother is grounds for disbarment. The consequences of your greed will follow you for the rest of your career. My voice softens as I turn back to Margaret, double quotes Mrs. Sullivan. Your husband was right about everything. You owe your children nothing. What you did for 5 years was the purest act of love. I've witnessed in 40 years on the bench. Take this money, pay your bills, keep your home, and every morning when you wake up, remember that you honored your marriage vows in a way most people never have to prove. Your husband died knowing he was loved completely. That's a gift. Beyond price. Court is adjourned. The gavel strikes with finality. If this story broke your heart and restored your faith in justice simultaneously, you need to subscribe right now and hit that notification bell. Share this video with everyone who needs to remember that parents deserve honor, not exploitation.com. And I'm calling my mom, if this may. You want to pick up the phone and tell your parents you love them. Because nobody knows how much time we have left. This was the story of how I, Judge Judy, defended a widow's dignity, destroyed 3 entitled children's greed, and reminded 80 million people that love real, sacrificial love's the only wealth that truly matters. Justice served.